And welcome to Chart of the Day Cafe for Tuesday, April 5th, 2016. Just going to read our disclaimer quickly. Trading stocks has a high level of risk and viewers should complete their own due diligence on any stock or underlying that they intend to own. 100% of the content of this video and communique is intended for journalistic and educational purposes only. This video and all indicators, strategies, and articles herein should not be construed as investment advice. Thank you for your patience with that. So as always, we start our videos off with a look at the Russell Index. We use the IWM, which is the ETF that represents the Russell 2000. We're looking at it on a 5-year monthly time frame, keeping a particular eye on this blue channel that the Russell traded in through all of 2014. And here we are in 2016. We talked about this last Thursday. The candle from last month was bullish, but on lower volume, right in this area where we want to be particularly careful. The thinking being that if it offered support through all of 2014, it may offer some resistance over here. So we want to see some volume come into these charts and some giddy up in the candles. We're being really careful in this area. Also wanted to remind viewers, it's easier to see perhaps on the Dow chart where we're up against this area of significant resistance. I think it was 5 quarters of price resistance where price got rejected from this area. So we want to be extra careful here. News this morning, Christine Lagarde, the head of the IMF, came out with some comments this morning expressing her concern for slowing global growth. So it sounds like she's calling for some coordinated efforts from global policymakers to deal with that slowing growth. It has spooked the markets this morning. Europe is well off. The US is off. The Dow started off about 120 points in the red. Asia mostly off. So we'll see how it gets resolved. I'm going to pull it away from the 5-year monthly to the 9-month daily so we can be reminded that we have this green circle around this gap that needs to be filled on the Russell. Will it be filled? Who knows, but we're keeping an eye on that. So price is off this morning. We're going to be extra careful. Some charts I think that are worth keeping an eye on. We've been talking about the chart of the long bond, TLT. Whoops, let me pull it into a smaller time frame. I'm sorry. 2-year weekly. We talked about this wedge forming on TLT and perhaps a breakout. So these are the weekly candles. So that breakout is occurring on TLT. The other one that we've been keeping an eye on is the US dollar. UUP, here is my green line. This is my area of like the lower blue band of support. UUP trading in this wedge had this breakout, the US dollar, so we want to see how it behaves around this area. So keeping a very close eye on the US dollar, the thinking being that if it starts to get pickup, it might be disruptive to global markets. The markets are now open. I'm getting this video out a little late this morning, so we had dancing around with the candles in the last few days around my green line, but it looks like it's starting to get some lift this morning, so we will keep an eye on the US dollar here. The other charts that I think are important to keep an eye on, we talked about these on Thursday, are the financials lagging. This is the XLF, the ETF that represents the financials in the US. Trading in this wedge, a little bit of volume starting to come into the financials. So my thinking being that if we're going to get some follow through in the charts to the upside, the financials will probably have to start kicking in here. So keeping an eye on this chart for sure. The other one that I think is worth noting, we're going to take a little walk around the world, is India. INDA, the ETF that represents India, I'm going to move it away from the 5-year monthly to the 10-year monthly. So you can really see India trading in this wedge. They lowered their interest rates by 25 basis points this morning. They are really working hard to see if they can get some momentum in their markets. Volume coming in, wedge, worth keeping an eye on and paying attention to because India being such a big consumer might be a driver of some growth. So keeping an eye on that and worth noting that they dropped their interest rates. So with that, some charts of interest I'm keeping an eye on. I am going to move it away from the to the smaller time frame. ICE Intercontinental Exchange, which is a prior Chart of the Day Cafe pick, dancing around this area of support. lots of value and growth in this, pays a dividend. If price picks up and starts to move up and over the blue line, that would be interesting. So keeping an eye on this. Business services, financial sector. So I think this is worth keeping an eye on. We also talked about NXPI in this area. You know, at Chart of the Day Cafe, it's all about price being up and over that blue line. So I think this one is an interesting one to keep an eye on as well. But with risk off, in our Chart of the Day Cafe portfolio, we will start to get defensive, sell our longs depending on how the day goes, and probably start to think about getting into something like the RWM, which is the ETF that is inverse to the Russell. So keeping an eye on this one. So it should be an interesting next couple of days. With that, I will leave you. Have a great Tuesday, and we'll put a video out on Thursday. Thanks, everyone.